everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Tech Talk Tuesday. I'm Jason.
I'm Zach.
And today we're going to be going over Tech Talk news as well as a tech tip of the day. And today we're going to be talking about differences between pre-built computers, store-bought like Dell or HP, pre-built in the sense of like a iBuyPower, CyberPower PC computer, and then full-on custom computers. For the Tech Talk news of the day, Jeff Bezos decided to drop down as CEO of Amazon. Amazon has been selling really well and been killing it since the COVID virus started. He's going to be replaced by Andy Jassy as the new CEO. Andy Jassy was the Amazon Web Service Division leader, and he is going to be taking over effective immediately.
Monday, Tesla announced that they will soon be allowing customers to purchase using Bitcoin. This came after an investment of $1.5 billion into the Bitcoin currency.
Microsoft is working on a new project called Write Once Storage and using Silica. It's a small little platform that's about the size of a coaster using actual glass silicate, quartz glass. It's going to allow for storage for in the thousands of years. It can be boiled, it can be frozen, it can be heated up to 500 degrees, it can be demagnetized. But what they're going to start doing is putting on stuff we want to keep forever. Like they just got done doing an edition of Superman, so that'll stay on that quartz glass for thousands of years, so we can go back in hundreds of thousands of years now and watch Superman later on.
Microsoft will be phasing out their legacy version of the Edge web browser. The older version of the web browser will be uninstalled and replaced by the new Chromium version. For those who run Legacy and Chromium side by side, expect in April that the Legacy version will be gone. So you can tell the difference. The Legacy version of Microsoft Edge is the blue E. It comes to a little point at the tail, at the bottom of the E. And the Chromium-based is the blue and green swirl that has been coming up recently.
And for all of you guys that aren't aware, there are several different browsers you can use, Edge being one of them. By far the one that comes automatically on there with a Windows computer. Chrome is probably the next biggest, or even bigger than Edge, because people use that to install Chrome. But there's also some browsers out there that are a little bit better on resources and not using as much information, as well as they don't track your personal information as much, like Brave, and even Mozilla Firefox is pretty good too. But you aren't just stuck using the Edge or Chrome. You can download a browser of your choice.
And we will get into that in a later Tech Talk. As far as the Edge goes, the security updates will cease whenever they roll this update out. It is expected around April. Lastly, the Raspberry Pi OS is under question by its users. A recent update added a Microsoft software repository, which is in a sense where the operating system fetches to get software that is pulled onto the operating system to be installed. This causes a communication with Microsoft servers when updating the OS, anytime you update the OS. Many users of these Raspberry Pis value data privacy and open source software, which is software that can be seen by any of the users. It can be basically looked at with a magnifying glass rather than closed source, which only the manufacturers can see and work on.
Like Apple and Microsoft Windows.
Correct, yeah. This open data privacy and open source software has been the opposite of Microsoft's technical practices. The director of the software engineering at Raspberry Pi stated this change would not be reverted because it makes the Microsoft-based tools that much easier to use. If you want a permanent fix for this issue, if you think it's an issue, you need to revert to using a different OS entirely.
All right, good information. All right, next we're going to go into our tech tip of the day. Our tech tip of the day is password security. If you guys are using your same password on all your devices, on all your different platforms, that's a big no-no. We've had a lot of security threats here recently where people are getting scammed, and once they get one password, they get all their passwords if you guys have the tendency to reuse passwords. So we want to talk about the sense of using secure passwords, first of all, as well as not doing repetitive passwords or passwords that are easy to guess. So we want to talk about some kind of differences you guys can make to make a good password.
In terms of keeping your password strong, length is a very important factor in it. We recommend at least 8 characters, but the longer the better, of course.
Yeah, the longer you can better. We like to use acronyms. Like yesterday I went to the park, so you use like Y, whatever is the first letter of each one. You want to change those up to where you're using uppercase and lowercase. You want to use numbers, you want to use special characters, but you want to definitely have a very robust password or use a password manager if you're comfortable with that to help keep track of it for you. But you definitely don't want to use your passwords over and over again either.
Nope. Strong phrases are very popular. But even more secure is just a random jumble of letters, symbols, and anything else you can think of on the keyboard.
Yeah, here recently they just dumped about 13 billion different 3 billion different passwords on the dark web of a combination of all of the most recent hacks, whether it be Yahoo or some of this SolarWeb stuff. They've put all of those together in one big package, and all those passwords are out there. So if you ever had a password that was corrupted, they could be using that again. Just make sure you guys change all your passwords pretty frequently and don't use stuff that's easy to guess.
The phrases can be a bit easier to brute force, which is basically guessing over and over and over again. They make huge word lists just like you described, and they just try them and try them and try them. They use programs to do that. As for the random jumble of letters and whatever, if it gets hard to remember, you can use a password manager. There's several out there. One I like is LastPass Password Manager. It's an extension to web browsers. You just download it onto there, and it works anywhere you go on the internet.
Yeah, or KeePass. There's lots of different password managers out there, and those will actually allow you to have a 128-bit key rather than having to guess a password. You can just go on there and individually put that in each time without having to actually remember it, so which is nice.
And if you're more into writing your passwords down, which is okay, keep them in a hard-to-find place, and don't put them on your monitor where you sit down and log in, and don't tape them under your keyboard.
Yeah, or have your webcam on, yeah.
Yeah, everybody knows the one under the keyboard.
All right, next we're gonna be talking today about the differences between what you get when you get like a Dell or an HP, for the most part, like a store-bought computer, and then what we like to refer to as a pre-built, and then eventually going into a full custom build. But what we want to talk about today is the fact that there are differences between what you receive when you buy. You might think you're getting a Dell or an HP, but the parts they use internally on here are much different than what you'd see from a professional built computer. So just taking a look inside here, this is pretty much a standard, and when you get past all of this, you come to a motherboard that looks kind of like this. Very basic, very rudimentary. Even if it has a video card, they're pretty basic video cards, really basic RAM. And about the only thing that's very similar as far as like capacity and performance is that the chip itself is usually a pretty robust chip if you're getting like an i7 or an i5 or a Ryzen 7, comparatively to what we would use in our builds. But the rest of the components, whether it be the motherboard or the video card or the RAM, everything else on our computers is much more robust, much more designed for speed and gaming and design work in general, but there's a huge difference in parts.
At first glance, you can see there's a night and day difference between these guys here and this one in terms of how tight they fit everything together, how difficult these guys can be to work on. They're not always hard to work on, but the tighter the spaces are, the harder it is to get your hands in there.
Yeah, they might meet all the requirements and tell you guys that it has a solid state or tell you guys that it has like 16 gigabytes of RAM. But with every part, there's usually some kind of variance in speeds, performance, overall aesthetically looking parts as well. Like this is the RAM that came out of this motherboard here. This RAM here is very just rudimentary, and while it might check the box that it's say, for instance, 8 gigabytes of RAM, this speed might be much slower than what we have for this Corsair RAM here. As well as the Corsairs look better, and they also have a nice little heatsink. But usually the nicer RAMs are faster, perform better, and last longer than your standard kind of sort of off-the-shelf RAM. The same goes true for whether you're using a solid-state drive or a standard hard drive. There's varying degrees in parts and speeds and performance and longevity. So when we have a standard mechanical hard drive here, which is in this computer here, those are pretty basic, but when you move into solid-state drives, there's still varying degrees on performance. This is a Samsung drive here. You've got, like, for instance, a Plexor, which is pretty inexpensive, or a solid-state drive from Professionals. These are not very good. They don't last very long, and they've also been prone to having data losses. So there's a wide range of performance parts. The NVMe solid-state drives, these guys here, go directly into the motherboard, and there's a huge difference between like this one here and what you'd see from a Samsung 870 or 980 Pro. When you're talking about power supplies, you can see there's a huge difference between what comes with a power supply from like a HP or a Dell. They're pretty rudimentary. They don't usually have a lot of the connections you need for additional parts or upgrading. It's really hard to upgrade these parts over time. Whereas you have like a gaming power supply, much easier to upgrade, much more options as far as what you can do for future and upgrading capabilities, and it just looks better as well. You want to talk about the video cards? So this is kind of sort of a video card that came out of this computer here, but you can talk about the two that are over there. those two there. So when you get like an HP or a Dell and they send you a video card, well, it says that it has a video card. It can be something as simple as this, whereas like this would be more of like a computer that comes from a pre-built from like a iBuyPower or a CyberPower PC or a Digital Storm. It might give you one like this, and then when you have a full-on gaming computer, you might get a much more robust, can handle a lot more higher temperatures, longevity-wise, lasts a lot longer than a standard video card. But these are kind of sort of there's differences.
And of course, the more powerful you get, the more fans you need,
To
the bigger
cover
it's
the
going to
heat.
be. Yeah.
So not every computer is the same. It might have the same specs, but it might just tell you it has a solid state drive, but it doesn't tell you which one it's using. Or it might tell you that it has a video card, but how good of a video card is it? We like to build custom game computers like this, but we can also take your pre-builts like that and make them better as well.
In terms of these guys, they're a good introductory into the gaming PC realm or video graphic design, whatever you want to do with it. If it's good at gaming, Jason likes to say it can be good at everything.
That's true. If you can game with it, you can usually do things like video editing or CAD software. It usually performs pretty well for about anything if you can game well.
These guys cut down on the hassle. They're ready to go. These are as well, but they're not made for gaming. These things only do business stuff. You don't get any extra anything out of them.
Yeah.
For less tech savvy people that aren't comfortable with putting their own stuff together, these guys can be a really good way to go. They usually have a really good balance between cost and parts you get. There can be some little takeaways, like maybe it'll have a powerful GPU. They cut back on RAM a little bit. They put 8 gigs instead of 16 gigs. And most people like 16 gigs, I think, anyways.
Yeah, and if you're using this, like for instance, like this is like a Walmart version. This would be like McDonald's, for instance, or this would be like a nice one that you get one off, where we don't build this until it's actually ready to go. But you can see like there's a lot more attention to detail. The cords are different. Everything's put in there very nicely. On this one specifically, we can actually do all kinds of stuff in regards to making it very custom for the person that they're getting it. So let's say you like Marvel or you like gaming, a specific game, we can put a pattern on there for you as well. But there's all kinds of different things we can do on custom gaming computers. But a pre-built like this one here is really kind of sort of a really good starting point, and you can upgrade from there, or we can make it better for you. But yeah, there's a huge difference in parts what you get for compared to like an HP or a Dell, compared to like a pre-built, compared to a custom gaming computer.
When you get into these guys, of course, they look a lot better than these do. You can get RGB, which is red, green, blue, the colors. A lot of the times the manufacturers will put them back here on the fans and up here on the fans. And then sometimes with these guys, you get them on the CPU coolers.
Yep. There's all kinds of wide range we can do. We can do liquid cooling systems for the CPU and the GPU. There's just an endless possibility as far as it comes to customizing a computer for somebody. So
comparing between these two, they are much easier to expand upon than these guys. These basically, as said before, have no expandability capabilities on them.
yeah, or very, very little. You might be able to add like different RAM or upgrade the RAM speed, but you can't really upgrade a lot of different parts, mainly because the power supply can't handle them, or there's not enough space in there.
These guys, like I said, have the balanced budget. With these, you can really get as expensive as you want to with them, depending on how much water cooling you put in it, tubes you run, different parts you put in.
So roughly speaking, let's say this computer here costs $500 or $600. This pre-built is probably around the $1,200 range, and then this custom one here, currently as it sits, is around $2,000. Okay, that ends our show for today. Thank you guys for watching. Tune in next week for our edition of security and camera systems. We're going to talk about the differences between like a Wi-Fi camera and a full-blown camera system, or a security panel with a self-install kit and a full-blown like monitored system. We're going to go through all the different systems we have for security.
Till next time.
Thank you for watching.